A retired Navy SEAL came home to Maine with one duffel bag, one dead man's compass, and no plan to stay. Then a changed German shepherd led him to her starving puppy, a ruined coastal rescue station, and a promise someone had tried to bury beneath snow, salt, and silence. What Cole Parker found there would change a whole town. Snow came sideways over Rockland, Maine, carrying the sharp smell of salt off Penobscot Bay and the dry sting of winter roads. The late afternoon had gone the color of pewter, and every roof along Main Street seemed hunched against the wind, as if the town itself had learned to lower its shoulders when weather raised its hand. Cole Parker stepped down from the bus with one old Navy duffel, a folded discharge folder, and the brass compass his grandfather had carried for 40 years in a pocket polished by work. He was 42, tall and broad through the chest, with close-cropped dark brown hair, gray-blue eyes that measured exits before faces, and a thin scar along his left cheek that looked paler in cold air. His pea coat had lost one button near the cuff. His gray training hoodie smelled faintly of travel and machine coffee. His boots were built for mud decks and places where falling down meant getting up fast, or not at all. For a moment he stood in the snow and listened to Rockland breathe. Tires whispered through slush. A gull cried somewhere over the harbor, rude and lonely. The bus pulled away behind him, leaving a cloud of exhaust that vanished almost at once. Cole did not wave. There was no one to wave to. Henry Parker had been dead for 7 weeks, long enough for condolences to become paperwork, and short enough that the fact still struck Cole at odd angles. An attorney had mailed the key. His Aunt Linda had mailed warnings. The Navy had mailed its final forms. Everybody, it seemed, had learned to send pieces of a life in envelopes. Cole shifted the duffel on his shoulder and began walking toward the coast road that led past Owl's Head and down to the old Parker place near Beacon Cove. He could have called a cab. He could have asked someone in town for a ride. But asking required a softness he had misplaced somewhere between Virginia Beach, a hospital corridor, and the folded flag in a room where men stopped saying brave things, because nothing brave sounded useful. Walking was simpler. Put one foot down, then the next. Snow brightened the road shoulders and darkened the sea beyond the breakwater. Lobster traps stacked beside a closed bait shop wore white caps. A church bell rang 5 times, thin and tired in the wind. Cole passed a diner glowing amber in the early dark, a hardware store with shovels in the window, and a post office whose flags snapped like a small argument. More than one person looked at him twice. In a town like Rockland, a stranger was noticed. A Parker returning was not a stranger. That was worse. Beyond the last line of houses, the road narrowed, and the bay opened on his left, black water breathing against stone. Pines stood on the inland side, their branches crusted with ice. He touched the compass in his coat pocket. Henry had left a note with it. One sentence written in the old man's blocky hand. A light is not yours because you hold the match. Cole had read it in a motel outside Providence and nearly thrown it across the room. He had spent 20 years following orders that came wrapped in duty. He had come home for closure, not another assignment from a dead man. A white pickup came up fast behind him, its engine clean and hard under the hiss of snow. Cole moved to the shoulder without turning his head all the way. The truck passed close enough to throw gray slush across his boots. In the corner of his eye, he caught a dent in the rear quarter panel, a blue tarp strapped over something in the bed, and the flash of a driver's hand wearing a dark glove. Then it was ahead, taillights red as cigarette tips curving toward the coast road. Cole watched it for 2 breaths. No more. Not every vehicle was a threat. Not every tarp hid something. His body believed otherwise, but his body had been trained by places where roads did lie. He muttered, "Easy,"
and kept walking.
The wind strengthened near a pull-off used by boat trailers in summer. Now the gravel lot lay empty, half buried under snow, with a rotting wooden sign that said Beacon Cove Launch in faded green letters. Cole almost passed it. Then he heard the growl. Low, raw, controlled. He stopped. The sound came from behind a line of beach roses and broken snow fence near the old launch ramp. Cole set his duffel down slowly. The zipper clicked against a buckle and the growl sharpened. He raised both hands, palms open. "All right?" he said, his voice low enough for the wind to carry only the shape of it. "I hear you." He turned sideways, making his body smaller, less direct. Under the bent fence, half sheltered by a drift, stood a German shepherd. Female from the frame. Sable coat, gold and gray beneath salt-stained dirt, with a black saddle across her back and a honey-colored chest dulled by hunger. She was too thin. Her neck bore a dark line where a chain had rubbed skin raw, and her right ear had a small tear near the edge that made it tilt when she focused. A chain ran from a collar to an iron ring bolted into an old post. Behind her, pressed into a nest of wet rope and dead grass, a puppy trembled so hard its head bobbed. German shepherd, too. Tan and black, enormous paws. One ear up, the other folded over his face with tragic importance. The mother stepped between Cole and the pup, lips lifted, body low but steady. Cole felt anger arrive under his ribs, cold and clean. He did not feed it. Anger moved too fast. The dog needed slow. He lowered himself to one knee in the snow. His bad knee complained. He ignored it. "You don't have to like me," he said. "That makes two of us." The shepherd watched his hands, not his face, his hands. He noticed then the faint, worn marks behind her shoulders, the ghost of a working harness. Not a pet harness bought for walks by the water, something fitted, used, familiar. She had been trained, even starving, even half frozen. She held position like a sentry who had forgotten the war ended, or had learned it never did. Cole reached toward his duffel and stopped when her muscles locked. Fair. He waited. Snow collected on his sleeve. The puppy made a thin sound. The mother's ear flicked backward, but her eyes stayed on Cole. That was the thing that hurt. Not the chain, not the ribs. The choice. She was using the last of herself to stand guard. Cole unzipped the duffel by inches and pulled out a wool shirt. He tossed it wide, not at her, not at the pup, just near enough to break the wet wind around the little nest. The shepherd flinched, but did not lunge. Cole made a small hand signal, one old shape from training days with working dogs half a world away. Hold. Her eyes narrowed. Her growl thinned into breath. He made it again. Hold. The world shrank to chain, snow dog, puppy, and the dull thud of his heart. His multi-tool was in the side pocket. He opened it slowly, keeping the metal low so it did not flash. The padlock on the chain was cheap and frozen. Cole moved toward the post, not toward her head, never over her body. The chain vibrated with her fear. He could smell wet fur, rust, old fish rot from the launch, and the bitter iron scent of blood where the collar had rubbed. "I know," he whispered when she bared her teeth. "Hands are trouble." The lock resisted. His fingers went numb. He braced the shackle against the post and worked the tool into it. Metal scraped. The puppy whimpered. The shepherd snapped her head back toward him, and in that motion Cole saw the full shape of what had been done to her. She expected pain whenever she looked away.
His jaw tightened until one tooth ached. The lock broke with a small crack. The chain fell into the snow. The shepherd did not run. Freedom stood beside her like another stranger. Then she turned and licked the puppy's face, hard, once, twice, as if calling him back from somewhere far too close.
Cole let out a breath. He took off his pea coat and wrapped the puppy before the cold could argue. The mother stiffened when he lifted the pup, so he held him low and still. "You can come with me," he said. "Or you can bite me and come with me. I would prefer the first plan. My insurance paperwork is already rude." The puppy squeaked inside the coat. The shepherd stared at Cole as if deciding whether humor was a weapon. Then she took one step forward, then another. Cole unhooked the rest of the chain from her collar and used a duffel strap loosely around her chest, avoiding the torn neck. Enough to guide, not enough to own. She accepted it with the dignity of a queen accepting a chair she had not requested. Cole lifted his duffel with one hand, the puppy with the other, and started down the road toward Beacon Cove, where Henry's dark house waited with cold rooms and old questions. After several steps, he looked back. The chain lay in the snow beside the launch post, ugly and still. "No one stays out here tonight," he said. The shepherd did not lean on him. She limped beside him, wary, thin, alive. Behind them, far up the road, the white pickup had stopped near a stand of spruce. Its lights went dark. A man sat inside watching Cole Parker disappear into the storm with the dogs. The Parker house at Beacon Cove met Cole with no warmth. Only a porch crusted in ice and windows black enough to look blind. The wind came hard off the bay, rattling the cedar shingles and pushing snow through the porch rails in thin white fingers. Behind the house, the old rescue shed crouched in the dark, and beyond it, the inlet breathed against the rocks with the slow, heavy patience of something that had outlived every Parker who ever tried to name it. Cole climbed the steps with the puppy bundled inside his peacoat and the mother shepherd limping several feet behind him. She stopped at the threshold when he unlocked the door. The key stuck, then turned with a dry scrape. Cold air rolled out of the house, carrying the smell of old pine boards, dust, lamp oil, and the faint sourness of a place that had been closed too long. Cole stepped inside first because the dog needed to see that the dark did not have teeth. "No cages," he said. "No tricks." She did not believe him. That was reasonable. The main room looked almost exactly as he remembered, and not at all as he remembered. A stone fireplace on one wall, a cast-iron stove near the kitchen arch, two worn chairs facing the window toward the cove, a shelf of storm lanterns, Henry's oilskin jacket still hanging on a peg, one sleeve folded in on itself like an empty arm. Cole set the puppy down near the wall, close to the stove, but away from a corner. The little dog tried to stand, slid on the floorboards, and collapsed with a soft grunt of outrage. Cole almost smiled. Almost counted. The mother crossed to him with a stiff limp and placed herself between Cole and the puppy, then between the puppy and the door, then between the puppy and every possible corner where danger could be hiding. "Thorough," Cole murmured. She gave him a look that suggested his opinion had not been requested. He built the fire with hands that remembered what the rest of him wanted to forget. Opened the stove. Clear old ash. Stack kindling, strike the match. Flame caught slow and yellow. The shepherd flinched at the first crackle. Cole froze match still in his fingers until her breathing settled. Warmth began to move through the room little by little, shy as an apology. He found blankets in a cedar chest beneath the front window. Henry had folded them with military precision, despite never serving a day in uniform, proving once again that stubborn old men could invent inspection standards out of weather and spite. Cole laid two blankets near the stove.
The puppy crawled onto one, then tried to chew its own foot and missed. "Elite unit," Cole said. The mother stared. "Sorry, your unit." She lowered her head, but kept her eyes open. He searched the kitchen next. Most shelves were bare, but Henry had believed in being prepared the way some men believed in scripture. In the pantry, Cole found sealed rice, canned stew, instant coffee, hard as gravel,
and a plastic tub labeled Animal Kit in Henry's square handwriting. Inside were gauze, antiseptic, a thermometer, soft wraps, paw balm, 2 collapsible bowls, and a notebook held shut with a cracked rubber band. Cole carried it to the table. The puppy lifted his head when food appeared. The mother blocked him gently with one shoulder, sniffed first, and allowed Cole to place softened kibble mixed with warm broth near the blankets only after he turned his back. He stood at the sink, pretending to study the dark glass, while behind him hunger made small, wet sounds. The sound loosened something in his chest. He had eaten cold rations under worse skies and called it enough. But 2 dogs eating without being punished felt more fragile than enough. It felt like a candle protected by both hands. When the bowls were clean, Cole opened the notebook under the weak kitchen light. The first pages held winter routes, tide, notes, names of volunteers, radio frequencies, supply lists, and rough sketches of the coast between Rockland Harbor and Owl's Head. Henry wrote like he hammered nails hard, economical, uninterested in elegance. Then a name appeared in the margin. Sage cleared North Rocks in 14 minutes. Sage refused lower path before washout. Sage alerted at Gull Cut before visual contact. Trust the dog. Cole read that line twice. Trust the dog. The mother shepherd lay with the puppy tucked against her chest, but her eyes were open and the torn ear angled toward him. "Sage," he said quietly. The name seemed to change the air, not loudly. The house did not gasp. The dog did not run to him. But her eyes shifted, and that shift landed in Cole like a latch lifting. He looked back at the page. "Is that you?" No answer, of course. Men got foolish when they decided silence was a private message from heaven. Still, Cole set the notebook where he could see it. Later, when the fire had settled, and the puppy had fallen asleep belly down with one paw in the food bowl, Cole called the veterinary clinic from the one spot by the window where his phone caught a bar if he held it high and did not breathe like a normal citizen. The woman who answered said, "Rockland Animal Care." He said, "I found 2 dogs on Beacon Cove Road. German Shepherd female, adult, chained outdoors. Pup maybe 8 weeks. Cold exposure, underfed, neck trauma." There was a pause that did not feel like hesitation. It felt like a person turning toward the real thing. "This is Dr. Abby Nolan. Keep them warm. Small food. Water, not too much. Do not touch the mother's neck if she reacts." "She reacts. Good, then she is still fighting. I will be there in 25 minutes. She arrived in 22, knocking twice on the door before stepping back so she would not crowd the entry. Abby Nolan wore a dark blue field coat, snow on her shoulders, and her brown hair tied low in a practical knot. Her face was tired in the eyes and steady in the mouth. She saw Cole measured him in one glance, then looked past him. Her breath caught. Only once. "Sage," she said. The shepherd rose, not all the way. Enough. Recognition moved through her body like pain remembering its old address. Abby lowered herself to one knee at a distance and turned sideways. "Hello, girl," she said, voice gone rough. "I looked for you longer than was convenient." Cole watched the dog watch her. "You knew her?"
Abby did not take her eyes off Sage. Half this coast did. Henry trained her for search and storm work. She could find a man under driftwood and snow before the rest of us admitted we were lost. The exam took time because Abby did not steal permission and call it care. She watched, waited, touched only when Sage allowed it, and swore under her breath once when she saw the damage beneath the collar. The puppy was less guarded.
He climbed into Abby's medical bag and emerged with a roll of bandage in his mouth, victorious and deeply confused when it unrolled behind him. Abby lifted him gently. "And you are trouble," Cole said. "He tried to eat my bootlace before he had a name." Abby looked at the puppy chewing her sleeve with priestly concentration. "Tucker, you name all criminals? Only the ones with ambition." For the first time all day, Cole laughed. It came out small, but it was real enough that Sage looked at him as if laughter might need a permit. Abby cleaned abrasions left medicine, wrote feeding instructions, and stared for a long moment at Henry's notebook on the table. "He kept that." "You knew about it?" "I knew about the routes, the station, the dog." She closed her bag. "After the volunteer unit shut down, paperwork said Sage went to a private handler inland. I did not believe it." "Why not?" Abby's mouth tightened. "Because Henry did not say goodbye to living things on paper." Night folded over Beacon Cove after she left. Cole spread his bedroll on the main room floor instead of opening Henry's bedroom. He told himself it was for the dogs. That was not the whole truth. The bedroom door at the end of the hall stayed shut. Plain wood, brass knob, a black line beneath it. Some doors deserved warning before a man opened them. Sometime after midnight, Cole woke to the scrape of claws on floorboards. He did not sit up fast. His body wanted to. Training rose like a blade. He let it pass. Sage stood in the hallway, moonlight silvering her thin frame. She faced Henry's closed bedroom door, head lifted, body utterly still. Tucker slept near the stove, paws twitching. Cole pushed himself onto one elbow. "He's gone," he said softly. Sage's ear moved. Maybe she understood the words. Maybe she understood absence. Maybe that was enough. The next evening, after Abby's second visit and 2 cautious meals, Sage stood suddenly and walked to the back door. She scratched once. Cole looked up from Henry's notebook. Most guests wait longer before assigning chores. Sage scratched again, then looked toward the old rescue shed behind the house. The wind rattled the glass. Tucker, asleep in a towel, made a tiny snore that sounded like protest from a distant government office. Cole put on his coat and took a lantern. Sage led him across the snow to the shed, moving with purpose that made her limp look temporary. The door groaned open. Dust, rope salt, and old wood smell rolled out. Inside were lobster buoys, rusted tools, stacked crates, spare oars, and a workbench where Henry had once fixed lamps while muttering that anything built after 1985 had no moral center. Sage crossed to the far corner and stopped. One floorboard there was newer than the others. Cleaner. Wrong. She touched it with her nose, then looked at Cole. The lantern flame shivered. Light moved over the new plank like a secret trying not to breathe. Cole crouched, one hand on the cold wood. Sage did not back away. "All right," he whispered. "Show me what he left behind." Morning came pale over Beacon Cove, with the bay shouldering gray ice against the rocks, and a clean wind combing snow off the roof in sparkling sheets. Inside the Parker house, the stove clicked and breathed. Tucker attacked a dish towel with the unearned confidence of a creature who had never paid for fabric, and Sage watched the back door, as if memory might come through it wearing boots. Cole pried up the new plank in the rescue shed just after sunrise. The board came loose too easily. Whoever had replaced it had known where it belonged, but not how Henry Parker hid things. Henry had been a practical man. He hid important objects where a patient person would eventually look and an impatient thief would not. Beneath the floor lay a metal tin wrapped in oilcloth. Cole carried it inside and set it on the kitchen table. Sage followed close, never crowding him, never looking away. Tucker attempted to climb his pant leg and slid backward with a sound of personal betrayal.
"Your help is noted," Cole said. The tin opened with a soft pop and the smell of paper salt and old machine oil. Inside were maps sealed in plastic, photographs, rescue logs, copies of county forms, and a folded list of names written in Henry's hard block letters. People rescued through Beacon Cove Station. Fishermen, delivery drivers, school teachers, 2 teenagers who thought a storm warning was a dare. A widower found wandering near the lower rocks. A pregnant woman whose car slid into a ditch on the coast road. Dates, weather, condition found, supplies used. No drama, just lives counted carefully. Because Henry believed memory should have receipts. Cole lifted one photograph. Henry stood younger and straighter beside the Beacon Cove rescue station, one gloved hand resting on the back of a strong German shepherd with a dark sable coat. Not Sage. Older. Beside him stood half a dozen volunteers, red-faced from cold.
Smiling in the embarrassed way people smile after surviving something too large to explain. Under the photographs lay a county incident report from January 1998. Subject recovered from coastal storm exposure near Gull Cut. Graham Whitaker, age 25. Cole read the attached statement twice. Graham, then young and nearly frozen, had signed that Henry Parker and the Beacon Cove volunteer team saved his life after he ignored road closures and tried to reach a private rental house above the cove. The report noted firewood blankets, radio contact, emergency broth, coastal dog team assistance. Without Beacon Cove Station, subject likely would not have survived until morning. Cole laid the paper flat. The stove ticked. Sage lowered herself beside the table, eyes fixed not on him, but on the tin, as if she could smell the dead man's hands on it. Outside, the bay wind slapped loose snow against the window. Cole thought of the white pickup, the chain, the way Sage had stared at dark gloves. Some men received mercy and carried it forward. Some seemed to spend the rest of their lives proving they had never needed it. The phone rang at noon, startling Tucker so badly he fell off the folded blanket and then barked at the floor for causing the incident. Cole answered with his shoulder against the kitchen window where the signal was strongest. "Cole," said Linda Parker from Portland, brisk as office lights. His aunt had a voice that made every sentence sound already filed in triplicate. "I heard you reached the house." "News travels. News in Rockland wears boots and buys coffee before sunrise. Have you looked at the property?" Cole glanced at the patched ceiling, the old sink, the draft sneaking under the door, the dog medicine lined up beside Henry's coffee tin. "I've seen worse." "That is not an estate plan." Linda sighed, and the sigh carried years of fatigue. "Listen to me. Your grandfather was a good man, But he spent his life turning every broken thing into a personal command from God. You just got out. You do not need taxes, road liability, conservation restrictions, and a half-ruined rescue station tied around your neck. You think I should sell? I think you should let people with money handle what he could not." Her voice softened slightly. "Harbor Stone Group has been trying to resolve this for months. They can modernize the area. They can take the legal burden off you. You could start over, clean. Clean."
Cole looked at his hands. Scratches from the lock marked 2 knuckles. Dog hair clung to his sleeve. Ash streaked his wrist. He did not feel clean. He felt present. I need to understand the paperwork. Then see Grace Bell. She kept Henry from being sued into dust for longer than anyone else could have. The line crackled. And Cole? Yeah. Do not confuse guilt with duty. The call dropped before he could answer. He stood there a while,
listening to Tucker chew something under the chair. "What have you got?" Cole asked. Tucker froze half of Henry's pencil in his mouth. Sage looked away as if she could not be expected to police every foolish male in the house. By afternoon, Cole drove Henry's old truck into Rockland, its heater whining like it had theological objections to warmth. Grace Bell's office sat above a chandlery near the harbor, reached by a narrow stair that smelled of rope dust and radiator heat. Her name was painted on frosted glass in black letters, and inside every shelf bowed under binders, maps, and law books with colored tabs lined up like signal flags. Grace Bell was 62, with short silver hair, brown eyes behind thin-framed glasses, and the calm of a woman who believed panic was what happened when people failed to label folders. She did not rise when Cole entered. She finished writing with a black fountain pen, capped it, and said, "Cole Parker, sit before you loom." He sat. "Yes, ma'am." "Do not ma'am me unless you intend to follow instructions."
"Sounds dangerous."
Her mouth moved almost into a smile.
"You are Henry's grandson." She opened a thick folder. "Your grandfather left you the resident stewardship rights and operating responsibility connected to Beacon Cove. He did not leave you a simple parcel of coastal land to sell to the highest bidder. Naturally, he made affection legally inconvenient." Cole looked at the first document she slid across the desk. Harbor Light Covenant. A conservation easement and public safety agreement established between Henry Parker Knox County authorities and several coastal property holders 28 years earlier. The language was dense, but the shape underneath was plain. Beacon Cove Station had to remain available during winter storm months. Supplies were to be maintained. Access kept clear when possible. The old lamp radio shelf, emergency stove, maps, blankets, and first aid stores were not quaint decorations.
They were obligations. "So I own it," Cole said. "But I don't own it. You inherit responsibility. The law occasionally surprises us by recognizing the difference." She turned another page. "Now the problem. Harborstone Group has petitioned for review of stewardship failure. They claim Henry allowed the station to become non-functional. Empty shelves, dead radio, unsafe access, missing supplies, inconsistent final reports." Cole's hand closed on the chair arm. "They are saying he failed." "They are implying it politely." "What do they want?" "Operational transfer under a public-private coastal revitalization proposal. Marina expansion, winter lodging, guided tours, tax revenue, improved emergency infrastructure." Grace looked over her glasses. "Beacon Cove stops being a promise and becomes an amenity." Cole stared at the map on the wall. Rockland Harbor lay pinned in blue. Beacon Cove curved below it, small and exposed. "They don't have to take the light. They just change what it shines on." Grace's eyes sharpened.
"Henry said you were observant."
"He said other things."
"He also said you might have to be angry for a while before becoming useful."
That one landed too close. Grace slid a cream business card across the desk. "Graham Whitaker, Harborstone Group, Regional Development Director."
"He asked whether I had heard from you."
"When?"
"Yesterday." Cole remembered the white pickup pausing in the snow. Not Graham, maybe. Or maybe the kind of man who did not always drive himself.
Name sounds familiar. It should. Henry rescued Graham during the storm of 1998. Beacon Cove station kept him alive. Cole picked up the card. The letters were navy blue, clean, expensive, confident. A rescued man coming back to buy the place that saved him. Grace recapped her pen. People are not always grateful in the direction we expect. She gave him a list. You need records, witnesses, proof that the station failed because of interference.
Not neglect.
You need evidence Henry remained competent. You need proof the covenant still serves the public. And you need time, which rich men buy by the hour, and decent men usually borrow at interest. Cole stood. Should I meet Whitaker? He will find you whether you should or not. At the door, she added, do not meet him alone if you are tired enough to want mercy from the wrong hand. Cole drove back at dusk, the heater still whining, the card heavy in his pocket. Beacon Cove appeared through falling snow, house lit faintly by the stove inside. Sage stood at the front window, not waiting exactly, but watching the road behind him. Tucker slammed both front paws against the glass and slid down slowly, leaving a smear that looked like modern art produced by hunger. Cole carried the tin inside and spread the 1998 report beside Henry's compass. The needle trembled, then settled north. Outside, the wind moved along the eaves. Inside, Sage stared at Graham Whitaker's signature until Cole felt the fight take shape around them. Not land against money. Not nostalgia against progress. Memory against convenience. Then Sage lifted her head toward the road. Cole followed her gaze and saw fresh tire tracks pressed into the new snow beyond the gate leading down toward Beacon Cove station. By noon, the snow over Rockland had thinned into a cold glitter that made the harbor look cleaner than it had any right to look. Fishing boats knocked softly against their slips. Gulls yelled over the bait dock, and the diner near the water glowed with the steady yellow light of a place that understood weather better than fashion. Cole chose a booth against the back wall because habit was a stubborn guest. It had followed him through airports, barracks, desert roads, hospital halls, and now home. The menu smelled faintly of fried haddock and old coffee. He had barely taken 2 drinks from a mug strong enough to strip paint when Graham Whitaker entered, as if the room had been expecting him and had tidied itself accordingly. Graham was 53, tall, trim, with silver at his temples arranged so well it seemed professionally convinced. His charcoal overcoat fit without effort. His scarf was dark blue, expensive, but quiet. He greeted the waitress by name, touched an elderly fisherman lightly on the shoulder, and crossed the room with a smile that made people feel chosen without quite knowing why. Cole understood the danger of him at once. Graham did not look like a man who would steal a town. He looked like a man who would make the town thank him for accepting the burden. Mr. Parker, Graham said. Welcome home. Cole did not stand. Cole. Graham, then. He slid into the opposite seat. Grace has spoken with you. Grace speaks. People survive. Graham laughed softly, not offended, which was its own kind of discipline. The waitress brought him coffee without being asked. Her name tag read Megan. She was broad-shouldered with silver-brown hair pinned by a pencil and eyes that gave nothing away. Free. She glanced at Cole, then at Graham, then poured coffee as if measuring the weather between them. Graham thanked her by name. She gave a sound that might have meant hospitality or warning. When she left, Graham set a cream envelope on the table. Not pushing it, just placing it where gravity could help. I know this is a difficult time. Henry was respected. Was he? Deeply. Graham's voice warmed in exactly the right place. He was also, if you will forgive me, a man from another era. Beacon Cove mattered.
No one should pretend otherwise. But needs change. Storm response has changed. Insurance has changed. Liability has become a language of its own. Cole looked at the envelope. His name was typed on it. No handwriting. Nothing that could tremble. And Harborstone speaks liability. We speak resources. Rockland needs investment, year-round jobs, safer roads, better emergency infrastructure. The marina plan would bring all of that. The old station could be replaced with a modern coastal response hub integrated into the resort and county network. He leaned forward slightly, not enough to threaten. Your grandfather held a light. We can build a system.
Cole watched steam rise from the coffee. A system. Men loved that word when they wanted no one to ask who had locked the door. Graham's eyes softened. You served a long time. There it was. Cole felt it before the words landed. You deserve rest. You deserve to begin again without a dead man's obligations and a property that will drain you dry. The envelope did not move. It did not have to. For one dangerous moment, Cole saw the life inside it. An apartment somewhere warmer, a door that locked and meant only sleep. No stove to feed, no dog watching every hand, no letters from attorneys, no road washed with snow and blood-colored rust. No dead teammate standing in memory with one arm missing from the dream, because dreams were rarely merciful with details. Rest whispered. That made it harder than a threat. Graham seemed to know. Henry was a good man, he said. But good men can leave burdens and call them blessings. Cole's fingers found the brass compass in his coat pocket. The little metal case was cold. A man Henry saved should be careful with the word burden. Graham's expression did not break. Not fully. But the warmth left his eyes for half a second, and behind it, Cole saw calculation turn its head. Then the smile returned. Gratitude is not a land policy. Neither is forgetting. Graham nodded as if Cole had made a fair point in a meeting rather than placed a hand on a wound. Think it over. He stood, buttoned his coat, and left the envelope on the table. At the door, 3 people stopped him. He gave each of them a different version of himself, and each version fit. After he left, Megan came back with the coffee pot. You forgetting that? She asked, nodding at the envelope. No. Good. She poured more coffee he had not requested. Henry ever tell you about the Riley blanket? Cole looked up. No. Then either he was modest or more annoying than I remember. She took a napkin from her apron and wrote an address. Come by my shop if you want to hear why Beacon Cove was more than a pretty shack for tourists to photograph. She slid the napkin toward him. Do not bring Graham's envelope. It might catch fire from shame. Cole almost smiled. Almost. He left the envelope on the table. The wind cut harder when he stepped outside, carrying flakes that stung his cheek. The whole walk to Henry's truck, he felt the offer behind him like a door left open in a warm room. That was how temptation worked. It did not always drag. Sometimes it invited. Back at Beacon Cove, Sage stood at the front window, body rigid, her torn ear angled toward the road. Tucker bounced against her legs, carrying what had once been a dish towel and was now a banner of personal conquest. Cole shut the door behind him and placed no envelope on Henry's table because he had not brought it home. Don't look proud, he told Tucker. You are unemployed. Tucker sneezed and attacked Cole's bootlace. Sage watched the road past Cole's shoulder. Her body did not relax until the truck engine outside clicked cold. Cole spread the 1998 incident report across the table and opened the tin again. Beneath the rescue logs lay a smaller packet tied with twine, Inside were photographs from different years at Beacon Cove station. Henry and volunteers stacking wood. Fishermen drinking from tin mugs. Children wrapped in blankets. A young woman in a red hat seated by the stove with ice in her hair and a look on her face Cole recognized from men pulled out of firefights. Not gratitude yet. Shock that the world had not finished with them. On the back, Henry had written, Megan Riley, February storm, husband and boy notified. Cole turned the photo over. Megan, younger, thinner, alive because a door had opened. He sat back. Sage came closer, slow, cautious. She lowered her nose to the photograph, not touching it. Her breath fogged the old paper. "You remember this place?" Cole said. Her eyes moved to him, dark and direct. The house clicked in the wind. He thought of Graham talking about systems. He thought of Henry's sentence about the match. He thought of his aunt saying clean. There was no clean here. There was only what had happened and what came next. Dusk settled blue beyond the windows. Cole went to the shed for more wood and saw the fresh tire tracks again near the gate. They were partly filled now, but not gone. Wider tread than Henry struck. Someone had come close to the house while he was in town. He followed the tracks a few yards until they curved away down the narrow lane toward Beacon Cove station. Sage stood on the porch, trembling, without sound, eyes locked on the same direction. Tucker tried to follow and tripped over his own feet. Cole looked toward the dark line of the coast road. Somewhere below, beyond pines and snow, the old station waited. Empty, Graham had said. Failed, Grace had warned. Cole pulled his coat tight. From the cove came the distant clang of loose metal in the wind, like a bell being struck by an invisible hand. The next morning broke bright and cruel over Beacon Cove. The kind of winter morning that made every broken thing shine like it had been forgiven. Sunlight flashed on the bay hard enough to hurt the eyes, and the rocks below the house wore collars of frozen spray. Cole stood on the porch with Henry's brass compass in one pocket and the old rescue logs in another, while Sage waited at the top step in her loose green harness. Tucker had been left inside with food, water, and strict instructions not to overthrow the household, which he answered by dragging a towel across the room as if preparing for a campaign. Abby arrived first, her veterinary truck coughing up the drive, blue field coat buttoned wrong at the top and hair escaping its tie. "You look like a man about to make a bad decision before breakfast," she said. "I invited witnesses. Witnesses can watch bad decisions. They do not improve them." A green pickup rattled up behind her. Sam Turner climbed out slowly, leaning on a wooden staff polished by use. He was 68, narrow as a fence rail, with a gray beard rough along his jaw and pale eyes that had spent too many years looking into weather. He wore an old wool sweater under a work coat and carried a coil of rope without explaining why. Some men brought flowers to grief. Sam brought tools. He removed his cap when he saw Sage. The hard lines of his face loosened. "Well, Lord have mercy," he whispered. "Sage." The dog did not go to him. She stood near Cole, head low, body unsure. But she looked at Sam longer than she looked at most people, and the look held something older than fear. Sam swallowed. "I thought you were gone, girl." Abby's voice softened. "A lot of people did." They took the lane down toward Beacon Cove station on foot because the snow had drifted deep near the lower curve. Sage did not lead like a storybook dog solving a mystery. She moved in broken measures, stopping near fence posts, rocks, and bent grass where memory seemed to pull at her body. Once she refused to cross a shallow ditch until Cole stepped back and let her choose another path. He did not hurry her. He knew something about routes the body refused even when the mind could see no danger. The wind carried salt kelp pine resin and the far diesel breath of working boats in the harbor. Sam walked faster than he looked able to, his staff punching clean holes in the snow. "Henry took this road in storms," he said. "Told him he was too old." "What did he say?" "Told me I was too ugly to be given advice." Abby made a sound that might have been a laugh. The station appeared below a stand of spruce, half built into a rise above the rocky cove roof, pitched steep to shed snow. Windows, shuttered door hanging a little crooked. A faded sign above the entrance read, "Beacon Cove Harbor Light." New paint had been smeared over old letters in a pale blue that did not match. Beneath the flaking surface, Cole could see Henry's original hand, uneven but stubborn. Sage stopped 20 feet from the door, her body lowered. Cole felt the leash tremble through the loose strap. He handed it to Abby without pulling Sage closer. "Stay with her." "That is my plan, and her demand," Abby said. Cole and Sam approached the station. The door scraped open with a sound like a throat clearing after a long silence. Inside, the air smelled of damp wood, dead ash, rust, and neglect. Not age. Cole knew the difference. Age settled. Neglect accused. Shelves along the wall stood bare except for mouse droppings and one torn corner of a supply label. The cabinet marked emergency rations hung open, latch forced. The radio mount was still bolted near the back table, but the unit itself dangled by one wire, battery compartment empty. The dry wood rack beneath the tarp held bark scraps and sawdust. A first aid box had been cleaned out so thoroughly that only a strip of adhesive wrapper clung to the bottom. Sam stood in the doorway, breathing hard. "Son of a..." Abby said his name from outside. He stopped, not from delicacy, but because the room was too quiet for curses to fix anything. Cole crouched by the stove. Cold ash lay in the belly of it, old but not ancient. Someone had tried to use it after the station was stripped. Or someone had staged use badly. He opened the lower drawer. Empty. "Could be vandalism," he asked. Sam gave a laugh that had no humor in it. "Vandals do not take radio batteries and paperwork and leave a station looking failed." Abby stepped just inside, keeping Sage near the threshold. Sage shook once and planted her feet. Abby touched the wall beside the stove where paint peeled in wide strips. "Someone painted over this." Cole took his pocket knife and scraped gently. Brown old wood showed beneath. Carved letters emerged, rough and practical. "If you make it through the storm, leave heat for the next soul." The words were not noble in the polished way. They were not made for a plaque or fundraiser. They were a rule simple as bread. Live. Leave something. Cole looked at the empty shelves, and anger moved in him again. But slower now. Heavier. A stove full of coals rather than a flare. Abby found the plastic shard near the back door, white with part of a navy blue logo still visible. Harbor stone. She held it by the edge. Sam knelt outside, one hand pressed to the frozen ground. "Trailer tracks," he called. "Old, heavy load. Came in before the last snow." Cole stepped out and saw paired grooves under the crust leading toward a service track that wound away from the cove. Sage would not follow them. She stood rigid near a pile of rocks, eyes fixed on the lower brush. Cole went slowly to her side. Beneath the drift lay a short piece of chain, cheap, galvanized metal, one link twisted open. Not the same chain from the launch ramp, but close enough to make his stomach tighten. A reddish-brown stain marked one edge, dark under the ice. Abby's mouth flattened. "Do not touch it." Was she here? Cole asked. Or held here after she was taken? Sam turned away. It was a small movement. Cole saw shame in it like a light under a door. The old man walked down toward the rocks and removed his cap. Wind lifted his gray hair. Cole waited. He had learned that some confessions had to cross the room by themselves. Sam spoke without turning. They did not find Henry in his bed. The cove seemed to quiet around them. Waves still struck stone, wind still moved. But the listening changed. Town version was easy, Sam said. Old man died in winter. People accept that. They do not ask where the cold got him. Abby closed her eyes briefly. Cole kept his voice level. Where? Near the lower point past Gull Cut. He was alive when they reached him. Not for long. Sam rubbed a hand over his beard. He had that compass in one hand and a dead radio battery in the other. I knew part of it, not all. Enough to be ashamed.
Cole felt the brass compass in his pocket grow heavy.
He called you. Sam nodded once. Said the station was wrong. Supplies gone. Radio dead. Sign turned. Said the storm was coming in early and some fool would follow the false road into the rocks. And you did not come. Sam turned. There was no defense in his face. That made it harder. No. I told him to wait until morning. Told him I was tired of him treating every broken hinge like a holy war. Told him he was too old to play keeper of the coast. His voice roughened. He went anyway. Sage stepped forward then, not to Cole, not to Abby, but toward Sam. She stopped beside the old man close enough that her shoulder almost touched his knee. She did not look up. She simply stood facing the cove with him. Sam covered his eyes with one hand. Cole looked at the station, the stripped shelves, the broken radio, the false paint, the twisted chain, the road sign visible down the hill with its arrow turned inland. No one had needed to shoot Henry Parker. No one had needed to swing a fist. Someone had removed heat direction communication and time. Winter had done the rest, because Winter was honest about what it was. By late afternoon, they returned to the house with photos on Abby's phone, the plastic shard wrapped in paper notes in Cole's field book, and a silence that did not ask to be filled. At the porch, Abby said, "Go to the post office." Cole looked at her. For stamps. For Nora Finch. If Henry mailed anything strange in the last year, Nora remembers. That woman remembers envelopes the way pastors remember confessions. Sage stood in the doorway behind him, watching the lane toward the station. Cole had thought coming home meant facing the dead. Now he understood the dead had left him facing the living. Clouds pressed low over Rockland the next day, turning the harbor flat and silver, while a fine snow tapped against windows like fingers too polite to knock hard. Cole parked Henry's truck outside the post office and sat there for a moment with both hands on the wheel. His knuckles still held the memory of the chain. His coat still smelled faintly of damp station wood and dog medicine. Across the street, Megan Riley's bait and marine shop stood between a pharmacy and a closed summer gallery, its windows fogged from a heater working harder than respect required. He would go there after, one thing at a time. The post office bell rang brightly when he entered, a cheerful sound with no idea what sort of day it had joined. Behind the counter stood Nora Finch, a compact woman of 55 with gray blonde hair cut at her chin, reading glasses hanging from a red cord, and eyes that moved over Cole once and filed him instantly. "Henry Parker's grandson," she said. "Cole, I know. Around here, a grandson remains a boy until he knows where the good shovel is kept." Abby, who had come along and was standing near the stamps, murmured, "Morning, Nora."
"Doctor?" Nora gave her the respectful nod of someone who admired anyone willing to put fingers near teeth for a living. Cole placed Henry's returned mail receipt on the counter. "I need to know if my grandfather mailed complaints about Beacon Cove, missing supplies, harbor stone, anything like that." Nora's face changed. Not surprise. Relief, with its coat still buttoned. "I wondered when someone would ask the question properly." She flipped the counter gate open and led them into the back room where metal shelves held packages, damaged envelopes, sorting trays, and the dry paper smell of waiting. "Henry was a good man," she said, moving briskly. "Also stubborn enough to make barnacles seem flexible. Do not turn him into a saint. Saints are impossible to correct, and he needed correction daily."
Cole followed her between shelves. "You knew him well?" "I knew when he was pretending not to limp." She stopped, glanced back, and her sharpness softened by a fraction.
"That is a form of knowing."
From a lower shelf, she pulled a gray mail tub and lifted out a large envelope stamped "Return to Sender." Henry's handwriting crossed the front in black marker. County Emergency Management. The address had been corrected twice, both times strangely, one digit wrong, one office name outdated.
"This came back 3 weeks before he died," Nora said. "I held it because Henry called asking whether it had arrived. He sounded angry. Then he died and people got very interested in calling him forgetful." Inside were copies. Henry had not mailed originals because the old man may have been trusting with weather, but not with bureaucrats. There were photos of empty shelves at Beacon Cove, station notes about missing radio batteries, supply deliveries redirected to a harbor stone storage lot,
Unauthorized access by maintenance subcontractors, and a list of dates. One name appeared again and again. Trevor Pike. Coastal Transport. Harbor Stone Liaison. Temporary maintenance. Nora tapped the line with one blunt fingernail. "Trevor Pike drives a white pickup with a dent near the rear panel. Parks badly. Smells like diesel cigarettes and self-pity." Cole read the name again. The pickup on the road. The tarp. The dent. Sage chained near the launch. The shape of the thing sharpened until his chest felt too narrow. "I saw that truck." Abby's eyes moved to his face. Nora folded the papers back carefully. "Then I hope you saw more than white paint." She gave him photocopies and kept the envelope. "Grace Bell gets the originals. I am not watching evidence vanish because a man with polished shoes discovers a shredder." Outside, the snow had grown thicker. Cole crossed to Megan's shop with the envelope copies inside his coat. A brass bell above the door rang lower than the post office bell, older, as if it had smoked. The shop smelled of salt, rope bait, freezer coffee, and wool. Floats hung from the rafters, coils of line filled bins. A shelf near the register held gloves, knives, flashlights, and a handwritten sign that said, "Cash is faster than complaining." Megan Riley looked up from repairing a lobster buoy. In daylight, she seemed older than at the diner, or maybe less willing to let diner light flatter anyone. "You came," she said. "You invited me." "I invited you to hear a story. Do not make it sound festive." She wiped her hands and led him to a back room where a small heater glowed orange. On a shelf wrapped in brown paper lay a gray wool blanket with a faded red stripe darned at the corners by careful hands. Megan lifted it like something borrowed from a chapel. 22 years ago, my husband and I got caught near Beacon Cove in a storm we had no business underestimating. Our boy Jacob was a baby at home with my sister. Car slid off the coast road. Heater died. My husband broke 2 ribs trying to get us out of a ditch like Pride had a tow rope. She ran her thumb over the red stripe. Henry found us after midnight. Had a dog with him, then not Sage. Mean-looking angel with white eyebrows. He got us to the station, wrapped me in this, fed my husband broth, and told us if we died after all that trouble, he would be personally offended. Cole could almost hear Henry saying it. Why keep it? Megan's mouth tightened. Because some people give you your life back, and thank you is too small to hold the receipt. A noise came from the doorway. A young man stood there, thin and broad-shouldered, in the unfinished way of 19, with dark blonde hair under a knit cap and grease on his sleeves. Jacob Riley looked from Cole to the blanket and went pale in a way Cole noticed before the boy could hide it. Mom? Megan turned. Jacob, this is Cole Parker.
Jacob nodded too fast. His eyes caught on the papers in Cole's hand. The name Trevor Pike was visible at the top of one copy. His throat moved. I have to check the freezer. It can wait. Megan's voice sharpened, but Jacob was already stepping back. Sage had come with Abby and waited near the front counter away from customers, Tucker asleep in a crate beside her. From the shop came a sudden metallic clink as Jacob bumped a chain hanging near the repair bench. Sage's reaction cut through the room. No bark, no growl. She stood so fast the crate rattled, body low, eyes fixed toward the back. Tucker woke and yipped once more, offended then brave. Jacob froze. Cole saw it. Abby saw it. Megan saw enough. Jacob, she said. The boy's hands curled at his sides. I don't know anything. Cole stepped out slowly, stopping 10 feet away. That was fast. Jacob's eyes went to Sage. Something like shame crossed his face and tried to leave before anyone recognized it. Cole pulled a photo from his coat, one Abby had taken at the house, Sage thin but standing, Tucker sleeping against her front leg. He held it out. Jacob did not take it. He looked anyway. The color left him completely. She alive? His voice came small. Megan's face changed. Jacob Riley, what did you see? The boy swallowed. I saw her in Trevor's truck, weeks ago, in a wire crate under a tarp, muzzle on. She looked bad. His eyes filled and he blinked hard, angry at the weakness. I thought maybe he was moving her to a vet. Cole held his gaze. You did not think that. Jacob flinched. No. The honesty cost him. Cole could see the bill coming due in the boy's posture. Megan put one hand on the work table. Why didn't you tell me? Trevor said Harborstone would stop buying from us. Said the shop would be done. Said he knew about the loan on Dad's boat. The room went very quiet. Megan closed her eyes once, then opened them with pain standing clear in her face.
So you traded silence for a boat that does not even float. Jacob looked at the floor. I was trying to help. No, she said softly. You were trying not to be scared. That hurt worse because it was kinder. Cole folded the photo and put it away. I need a statement. Typed, dated. Grace Bell sees it before anyone else. Not the sheriff first if you are afraid of pressure. Jacob looked at him. Will that protect us? No. The boy gave a broken little laugh. You are terrible at making people feel better. I am asking for the truth, not comfort. Sage stepped forward from the counter, slow and stiff. Jacob went still. She came only close enough to smell the air near his boot, then turned away. She did not forgive him. She did not accuse him. She simply left him with himself. Jacob's face crumpled for half a second before he got it under control.
"I'll write it," he said. Megan looked down at the blanket in her hands. Abby rested her fingers lightly on Sage's harness.
Outside, snow softened the street, as if trying to hide every track before dark. Cole knew better now. Snow did not erase everything. Sometimes it only waited for the right dog to show where the pain had walked. The harbor was hushed under low clouds that evening, and the working docks at Rockland seemed to hold their breath between one tide and the next. Snow lay on coils of rope, on stacked traps, on the shoulders of boats that would rather have been moving, and the cold carried the smell of diesel, fish scales, wet wood, and the iron edge of seawater. Cole found Jacob Riley behind the old bait shed where the dock lights buzzed and the pilings creaked. The boy was sitting on an overturned crate, elbows on knees, staring at a small skiff tied under a blue tarp. The boat had the sad look of something loved beyond its usefulness. Its paint was cracked. One rail was splintered. The outboard motor had been opened and abandoned mid-repair. Cole stopped several feet away. "Your mother's looking for you." Jacob did not turn. "She knows where I am." "That is not always the same thing." The boy wiped his nose with the back of his glove. You ever try fixing something because it was the last piece of a person you had left? Cole looked at the skiff. Yes. Jacob's shoulders moved at that answer. Maybe he had expected a lecture. Cole had used up too many lectures on himself to spend them freely. "Dad bought her before I was born," Jacob said. "Called her Mercy Bell. Stupid name for a boat. Boats survive worse names." A faint smile appeared and vanished. "Trevor said he could get parts cheap. Said Harborstone needed winter help. Loading moving supplies, nothing criminal. I knew he was trash, but lots of men are trash and still pay cash." The dock groaned beneath him. Cole waited. Silence had weight if a man did not rush to fill it. Jacob finally looked at him. "I saw the dog in his truck behind the storage lot near Thomaston. Wire crate. Tarp half off. Muzzle on." She was shaking. Not like cold. Like she knew if she moved wrong, he'd remember her. His jaw worked. "Trevor said she had made herself a problem. Said some old man trained her too well." Cole felt his hands curl inside his pockets. He opened them slowly. "Did you see the puppy?" "No, maybe later. I heard whining once, but I thought it was brakes on the trailer." "That sounds stupid now." "Fear makes people hear badly." Jacob gave him a quick look, suspicious of kindness. "You always this calm?" "No." "Good." Snow ticked against the tarp. "Trevor told me if I talked Mom's supplier, credit would disappear. Said Harborstone would buy the whole block and leave us with a lease we could not breathe under. He knew about our loan. Everybody knows everything in this town when it can hurt you." Cole leaned against a piling. "You do not have to become brave all at once." "That's convenient because I am behind schedule." This time the smile stayed a second longer. Cole handed him Grace Bell's card. "Write what you saw. Exact. Dates if you remember. Places. Do not dress it up. Do not make yourself look better." Jacob took the card. His thumb rubbed the edge. "Will my mother forgive me? I do not know." Another comforting answer. "She loves you. That is not the same as quick." The boy nodded. Across the dock, a chain knocked against a mast in the wind. Jacob flinched, and Cole saw the shame in the flinch, the way fear stayed in the muscles after the threat had left. He knew that too. When he returned to Beacon Cove, Abby was on the porch with Sage and Tucker. The puppy had grown bold enough to drag one of Henry's old wool socks outside and was now standing on it like a conquered island. Sage stood over him, unimpressed with empire. Abby's eyes went to Cole's face.
You found him. He will write. Good. Maybe. The house smelled of stew, dog food, and damp coats. It was beginning to smell like people lived there, which unsettled Cole more than the emptiness had. He had spent years treating rooms as temporary. A place became dangerous when it learned your shape.
The next afternoon brought Graham Whitaker up the drive in a black SUV, polished enough to make the snow around it look poorly dressed. Cole saw it from the kitchen window. Sage saw it before he did. Her body lowered not in attack, but in dread. Tucker stopped chewing a piece of kindling and pressed against her leg. Abby, who had come to recheck Sage's neck, set down her mug. Expecting visitors? No. That rarely stops them. Graham stepped out carrying a wicker basket covered with a checked cloth. His overcoat was dark, his boots tailored, his leather gloves fitted close. Snow settled on his shoulders and did not dare make him look foolish. He smiled from the bottom of the porch steps. Cole, I hope I am not intruding. You are. Abby's mouth twitched. Graham accepted the bluntness as if Cole had commented on weather. Then I will be brief. He lifted the basket. Bread from the diner, coffee, a few things from town. I thought perhaps our first conversation began too formally. Cole did not move to take it. Sage stepped in front of Tucker, her eyes fixed on Graham's hands. Graham glanced at her for less than a second, less than polite interest. Enough for Sage to tremble through her shoulders. Abby's expression went flat. She was more beautiful before someone starved her. Graham turned his concern toward Abby with professional softness. Dr. Nolan, I heard rumors she had been found. Terrible. Rumor walks fast, Cole said. Sometimes faster than mercy. Graham set the basket on the lowest step. I wanted to speak plainly. Harborstone is prepared to improve our offer. You would be relieved of stewardship obligations, legal expenses, repair costs, and long-term liability. Beacon Cove would be replaced with something safer, staffed, modern. Free? Cole asked. The word landed. Graham's smile paused. Accessible. Abby made a sound like a door closing. Graham's gaze returned to Cole. Rockland cannot survive on memory alone. Henry's work was admirable, but sentiment will not shovel roads or pay insurance. Sage's body dropped another inch. Graham began removing his gloves, perhaps because the leather was damp, perhaps because he wanted to reach into his coat, perhaps because habit is a crack where truth leaks out. The right glove came off. A scar ran along his thumb, pale, long, slightly raised. Sage went silent in a way that seemed to draw sound from the porch. Her ears flattened, her eyes locked on the thumb as if the scar were not skin but a door opening into a room she had survived. Cole remembered Henry's note from Nora's envelope. Blood smear near radio cabinet latch, right thumb injury possible. Graham noticed Sage noticing. His face changed, tiny, fast. Annoyance, not pity. Then the glove went back on. Animals remember pain, strangely, Graham said. Cole stepped down one stair. Men remember mercy worse. The warmth left Graham's face. Not all at once. Enough. Careful, Cole. There it was. The warning under the polished floor. Graham reached into his coat and removed another envelope, thicker than the first. He placed it on the basket. Heavy legacies crush tired men. You have carried enough. Cole wanted suddenly and fiercely to take him by the collar and put his back against the SUV. He wanted Graham's breath to change. He wanted the world to become simple leverage and consequence, body and wall. Behind him, Sage shook without sound, and Tucker pressed beneath her chest.
Jacob had not signed yet. Nora held originals. Grace needed order. Henry had not kept a light burning by winning fights on porches. Cole put both hands at his sides. No. Graham tilted his head. No basket, no offer, no more visits without calling. For a moment, Graham studied him with a look clear as ice. Calculation, irritation, adjustment. Then he smiled. The county will think carefully. I hope you will as well. He returned to the SUV and drove away,
leaving 2 black tracks in the snow. Sage watched until the road swallowed him. Only then did she exhale. Not a sigh. A release from somewhere deeper than lungs. Abby touched Cole's sleeve. You all right? Cole looked at the envelope on the basket. Not yet. That evening he called Sam and said only, We open the station tonight. Sam arrived with tools before Cole had finished loading wood. Megan came with the old blanket. Jacob came without meeting anyone's eyes, carrying a box of batteries, like pennants with handles. They drove down through falling dark to Beacon Cove station. No speeches, no grand promise. Work. Shovel the threshold, clear the stove, stack dry wood, mount a temporary radio, hang a lantern, place the blanket back on the shelf. Sage stood outside in the snow, then crossed the threshold on her own, trembling but walking. Tucker followed and immediately attacked Sam's bootlace with the seriousness of a creature hired for inspection. Heat caught slowly in the stove, orange and stubborn. Through the window, the lamp glowed toward the road. Small. Alive. From the ridge above, unseen in the trees, the white pickup idled for nearly a minute before its headlights disappeared. Cold stars stood over Beacon Cove that night, bright and hard above the black water, while the reopened station held its little square of warmth against the shore. The stove glowed red, and the corner wood ticked as it burned, and the lantern on the window shelf threw gold light over the bare table where Henry had once kept his logbook. Cole stood in the doorway and watched the room return to function piece by piece. Not beauty. Not yet. Function was holier in winter. A door that closed, a fire that caught, a radio that answered, a blanket dry enough to save skin. Sam tightened the repaired latch and swore at it until it obeyed. Abby restocked the first aid box with the grim economy of someone who had seen panic waste gauze. Megan unfolded the old gray blanket with the red stripe and set it on the shelf without saying a word. Jacob stood outside under the eave, holding an empty cardboard box, not sure whether he had earned the right to step in. Sage noticed. She stood between Cole and the stove, thin marked ears, uneven, the old light picking out gold in her sable coat. Then she walked to the doorway. Jacob froze. Sage sniffed the air near his knee. Not his hand, not his face, his knee. As if even she knew human shame often settled lower than speech. Then she turned back into the station. Jacob let out a breath that shook. Megan saw it and looked away, giving her son privacy in the only way she could manage. Tucker had no such manners. He discovered a loose work glove and dragged it beneath the table where he defended it from Sam with a growl no larger than a cough. Terrifying animal, Sam said. Cole said, He has maritime jurisdiction now. Abby's laugh was brief and surprised. It changed the room. For a few minutes, the station was not only evidence, it was a place. They wrote a temporary supply list, taped emergency numbers beside the radio, and hung a plastic map in a clear sleeve. Cole copied Henry's carved rule onto the first page of a new ledger. If you make it through the storm, leave heat for the next soul. He stared at the words after writing them. Henry's line had not become easier, it had become nearer. Around 9, the radio crackled, static at first. Then the weather band voice warned of falling temperatures, black ice on coastal roads, and wind off the bay after midnight. Sam looked at the stove. Henry would say we stacked the wood wrong. Did we? Cole asked. Probably. Would he fix it? Absolutely. Then complain his back hurt. Megan snorted. That man complained like a hymn. Outside, Sage stood at the edge of the lantern light, looking up toward the road where the pickup had been. Cole followed her gaze, but saw only darkness between spruce trunks. The feeling of being watched had not left. It had changed clothes. Back at the house, near midnight, Cole found Jacob at the kitchen table with Grace Bell's card, a legal pad, and a pen held so hard his fingers had gone white. Megan sat in the front room pretending not to listen while repairing a seam in the old blanket. Abby had gone home after checking Sage's medication, but she had left behind soup instructions and the faint impression that she would return whether invited or not. I don't know how to start, Jacob said. Cole poured coffee that had lived too long on the stove. Start with where you were standing. That's it. The truth likes a plain door. Jacob bent over the page. He wrote slowly. He scratched out too much. Cole stopped him once. Do not make yourself sound cleaner. The boy's jaw tightened. I'm not trying to. You are. Everybody does. Jacob looked up, hurt and angry. You ever write down the worst thing you did? The kitchen became very quiet. Cole felt the question land somewhere behind his ribs. He saw water black under night vision, heard a teammate's voice in his earpiece, felt the moment command and instinct split in different directions, and no prayer arrived fast enough to tell him which one was mercy. His hands did not shake. That was the old training. It made the shaking go somewhere inside instead. Yes, he said. Jacob's anger faltered. Did it help? Cole looked toward Sage, asleep near the stove but facing the door. Not at first. The boy nodded and kept writing. By morning, the statement was done. Grace came before breakfast, read it without changing her face, and then looked at Jacob over her glasses. This is ugly. Jacob swallowed. Yes, ma'am. Good. Useful testimony often is. Megan muttered, Do not ma'am her unless you mean to obey. Grace's mouth twitched. She took copies of the statement, Henry's returned envelope, the 1998 report, Abby's veterinary notes, and Cole's photos from the station. Harborstone has requested an expedited county hearing, she said. They will argue immediate stewardship failure. Empty station. Dead radio. Unsafe access. They will say your restoration is sentimental and late. Cole leaned against the counter. It was stripped. We will say that. Will they believe it? Grace capped her pen. Belief is a luxury. We need enough doubt to stop transfer and enough proof to open investigation. Tucker chose that moment to drag a dish towel into Grace's briefcase. She looked down. Your associate is unlicensed. He works in logistics. Grace removed the towel with 2 fingers. He has a future in county procurement. The hearing date was set for Friday. The days between came hard and full. Cole split wood before dawn, checked the station twice a day, gathered receipts from Nora, and drove Jacob to Grace's office so the boy would not lose courage in the space between intention and consequence. Abby came to the house every evening. Sometimes she brought medication. Sometimes she brought food. Once she brought a stack of old Beacon Cove photos from her clinic storage, including one of Henry kneeling beside Sage when she was younger. whole bright-eyed, wearing a red search harness. Sage sniffed the picture, then touched it once with her nose. Abby's face went still. Cole did not speak. Some grief asked only for a chair beside it. On Thursday afternoon, Trevor Pike found Jacob at the docks. Cole arrived because Megan had called when her son did not return from an errand. The sky was low, spitting frozen rain. Trevor stood near the bait shed, heavy through the shoulders, beard patchy. White pickup idling behind him with its dented rear panel and a coil of chain in the bed. Jacob stood a few feet away, face pale, fists useless at his sides. Trevor looked at Cole and smiled with half his mouth. "Parker, heard you were playing Lighthouse." Sage, who had come in the truck with Cole because leaving her behind had made her frantic, stepped down onto the dock. Her harness was loose and green, her body still lean, but the sight of her changed Trevor's face before he could make it careless again. "Well," he said, "she lived." Cole's pulse slowed, dangerous slow. "You knew her?" "Lot of shepherds on the coast." Trevor spat into the slush. "That one was always trouble. Dog can't testify, though." Jacob's head snapped up. Cole did not move closer. "No, but boys can." Trevor's eyes shifted to Jacob. "Boys can lose shops." Sage gave a low sound. Not loud, not dramatic. It rolled out of her chest like weather moving under a door. Trevor glanced at her, then at Cole, and for one thin second the dock held every possible bad ending. Cole wanted to step into it. His hands remembered how. Then Abby's voice came from behind him. "Touch that dog or that boy and I will document every inch of you for the sheriff before you finish bleeding." Trevor looked past Cole. Abby stood with Megan, Grace, and Sam at the dock entrance. Megan held a boat hook like an opinion. Sam held nothing and looked more dangerous for it. Trevor laughed, but the laugh had lost weight. He climbed into the pickup. "County will sort it." "It will," Grace said. The truck pulled away, tires spitting dirty slush. Jacob's knees bent as if the strings had been cut. Megan caught him before he fell. Sage went to the boy, sniffed his sleeve, and stood there until his breathing slowed. The next morning, snow fell soft over Rockland as they walked toward the county building. The hearing waited under fluorescent lights and polite language. Cole wore no medals, no uniform. Just Henry's compass in his pocket, his father's old watch on his wrist, and dog hair on his coat that no brush had defeated. In the hallway outside the hearing room, Sage sat beside Abby Tucker, leaning against her like a small, warm mistake. Cole looked at them once before going in. Sage did not whine. She only held his eyes, and that was enough to make him open his hands. Snow fell over the Knox County building in clean, patient layers, softening the courthouse steps and whitening the shoulders of everyone who climbed them. Inside the hearing room looked smaller than the decision it was meant to hold. Beige walls, a county seal behind a raised table, rows of wooden chairs, fluorescent lights humming overhead, and tall windows through which the harbor was only a gray suggestion beyond falling snow. Cole sat beside Grace Bell at the front, hands open on his knees because fists would have told the wrong truth. He wore a dark flannel shirt under his peacoat, boots, cleaned but scarred, Henry's compass in his pocket, and no visible proof that he had once belonged to a world of raids, radios, and commands whispered under rotor noise. Across the aisle, Graham Whitaker sat with two Harborstone attorneys. His suit was charcoal, his tie was navy, his right hand rested under the table, thumb hidden. Trevor Pike sat behind him, in a jacket too clean for the man Cole had seen at the docks. Trevor kept looking at the door, as if measuring exits was a habit he had borrowed without understanding its cost.
Abby waited outside in the corridor with Sage and Tucker. Cole had refused to bring Sage into the room as a display. She had already given enough. Still, he knew she was there. Some presences did not require a chair. The board chair, Patricia Wells, called the hearing to order at 9. Harborstone spoke first. Their lead attorney was narrow-faced, smooth-voiced, and precise in the way of men who had never had to shout over weather. He did not call Henry irresponsible. He called him beloved, but aging. He did not call Cole unstable. He called him recently discharged and not yet established in local stewardship operations. He did not call Beacon Cove worthless. He called it a legacy structure whose operational viability had lapsed. Words wearing gloves. Photos appeared on a screen.
Empty shelves, broken radio, bare wood rack, crooked sign, damaged door. Evidence of failure, the attorney said. Evidence that Harbor Light Covenant had not been maintained under Henry Parker's stewardship and could not reasonably be restored by a grieving heir with no formal county emergency certification. Cole listened. Grace had warned him. "Let them build the room they want," she had said. "Then we show the missing wall." The attorney turned. "Mr. Parker, you returned to Rockland only recently, correct?" "Yes." "After a long career in high-stress military service?" "Yes." "You were not present during the final years of your grandfather's stewardship?" "No." "You have not previously managed a public winter safety station?" "No." "No formal land trust administration experience?" "No." The attorney's expression arranged itself into sympathy. "Would you agree that grief, recent transition from military life, And personal attachment to your grandfather's memory may affect your judgment regarding Beacon Cove?" The room went still. Cole felt answers rise in him hot and clean. Would you agree that money affects judgment? Would you agree that polished men can empty a room and then photograph the emptiness? Would you agree that I could cross this space before your next breath and make you understand the difference between patience and weakness? His pulse slowed. Not peace. Warning. Then through the closed door came a tiny sound from the hall. Not a bark. Tucker whining because he wanted something quickly hushed by Abby. It was ridiculous. Small. Perfect. Cole looked down and saw his fingers had curled. He opened them. Grace's pen stopped moving beside him. Cole lifted his eyes. "I agree, grief affects judgment," he said. "So does money. So does shame. So does wanting a place to become profitable enough that people stop asking what it used to be for." The attorney's mouth tightened. Cole continued quieter. "I came home late. That is true. I do not know everything yet. That is also true. But I know the difference between something neglected and something stripped." For the first time, two board members looked up from their papers. Grace leaned back by 1 inch, almost a smile. Then witnesses began. Megan Riley came first, not as a performer, but as a woman carrying something too heavy for theater. She laid the gray blanket with the faded red stripe on the evidence table. 22 years ago, my husband and I were found half frozen near Beacon Cove," she said. "Henry Parker brought us to the station. There was firewood, there was heat, there were blankets. This blanket. I kept it because some debts do not fit in a thank you card." The Harborstone attorney asked whether memory could soften over time. Megan looked at him over her glasses. "Honey, I forget why I walk into rooms. I do not forget the blanket I thought I might die under." A small breath moved through the room. Nora Finch followed with the returned envelope. Every copy organized by date, postage mark, address change, and county intake reference. She explained the misdirected complaints, the missing battery notes, the supply redirections, and the repeated name Trevor Pike. When asked whether returned mail proved anything, Nora's eyes sharpened. Returned mail does not become imaginary because it inconveniences a developer. It becomes returned mail. There is a difference. I have spent 30 years explaining this to people who lick envelopes badly. Patricia Wells looked down, hiding what might have been a smile. Sam Turner spoke next. He brought no charm, only weight. He told the board Henry had called him the night he died, saying the station had been tampered with, the radio dead, the sign turned. Sam's voice roughened. He did not hide from it. I told him to wait, he said. I told him he was too old to go. I did not go with him.
That was my failure.
But Henry Parker did not forget Beacon Cove. He died trying to check it. Abby came in after Sam. She did not bring Sage. She brought medical records, photographs, and a veterinary statement written in the blunt language of wounds. Her voice stayed dry and steady as she described collar trauma, starvation signs, old working harness marks, Tucker's cold stress, and the false transfer history that said Sage had gone to a private handler. When Harborstone's attorney asked whether Sage's injuries proved Harborstone involvement, Abby said, "No, I am a veterinarian, not a prophet. It proves abuse, improper restraint, neglect, and a transfer record that deserves investigation by someone who does not use wishful thinking as a sedative." Jacob Riley was last before Grace's closing evidence. He walked to the table like every step cost him part of his childhood. His cap twisted once in his hands before Megan reached from the row behind and touched his wrist. He stilled. His voice shook at first. He admitted working for Trevor. He admitted seeing supplies redirected. He admitted seeing Sage in a wire crate, muzzled and weak in Trevor's truck. The attorney pressed him hard. Had he reported it? No. Had he taken money from Trevor? Yes. Was he speaking now to protect himself? Jacob looked at Sage's empty place outside the door, then at the board. I am speaking now because I did not speak then, he said. And that dog paid before I did. Silence followed. Not dramatic silence. Real silence, the kind that makes people hear their own breathing. Grace then rose with the 1998 report. She did not waive it. Drama would have insulted the facts. She showed the board Graham Whitaker's signed statement confirming Beacon Cove was stocked, operational, and life-saving during the storm that nearly killed him. Heads turned. Graham remained still. Too still. When his turn came, he stood with practiced sorrow. I have never denied Henry Parker helped me, he said. I owe him gratitude. But gratitude cannot be public policy. Rockland needs modern systems jobs, safer infrastructure. If Mr. Pike mishandled supplies, that should be investigated. But do not confuse my support for progress with cruelty. It was good. It might have worked in a room that had not heard Megan speak of the blanket, Nora speak of paper, Sam speak of the dead, Abby speak of wounds, and Jacob speak of silence. The board recessed for 25 minutes. No one talked much in the hallway. Sage rose when Cole stepped out. She did not pull toward him. She simply stood, Tucker leaning against her front leg, watching. Cole crouched a few feet away. Not done yet, he said. Sage's dark eyes held his. Not comfort, recognition. As if both of them understood that waiting could be harder than running. The snow outside the county building had thickened by the time the board returned, turning Rockland Harbor into a pale blur behind the tall windows. Inside the hearing room, every chair seemed to creak too loudly, and every cough arrived ashamed of itself.
Cole sat with Grace on one side and silence on the other. His hands were open on his knees again. He had opened them so many times that morning it felt less like calm than labor. Graham Whitaker sat across the aisle, face composed, attorneys whispering near him with their mouths close to expensive paper. Trevor Pike had stopped looking at Cole. That was not guilt, perhaps. Men like Trevor often mistook avoidance for innocence. Patricia Wells adjusted her glasses and read from a prepared sheet in a voice that had carried hard decisions before and knew better than to decorate them. The county would suspend any transfer of Beacon Cove operating authority to Harbor Stone pending investigation.
All development review affecting the Harbor Light Covenant would be paused. A formal inquiry would be opened into supply redirection, unauthorized access, false animal transfer records, and the condition of Beacon Cove Station during Henry Parker's final month. Cole Parker would be granted provisional stewardship for 12 months, during which he had to restore winter operations, maintain public access logs, coordinate with county emergency channels, pass safety inspection, and provide quarterly documentation. It was not victory. It was not defeat. It was a door left open, with a storm pressing against it. Grace exhaled through her nose. "Enough to start," she murmured. Across the room, Graham gathered his papers slowly. No one rushed to shake his hand. That was new. People watched him without quite knowing what to do with the space where trust had been. He looked at Cole once. No smile, no warmth. Only a clear, measuring look that said the contest had changed shape, but not ended. Then he left attorneys closing around him like weather shutters. Trevor tried to slip out behind the second row. Sam Turner stepped into the aisle, not touching him, not blocking him with drama, just standing there with old bones and an old sailor's stare. Trevor stopped. 2 deputies met him near the door and asked him to come speak with them. He laughed too loudly. "About what?" Nobody answered in a way Cole could hear. That was all right. Some questions worked better when asked in small rooms. Outside the courthouse steps were turning white. Abby stood near the railing with Sage and Tucker. Megan had one arm around Jacob, though the boy looked both relieved and sick, as if truth had lifted a weight and revealed bruises underneath. Nora held her mail satchel against her chest like a holy object with postage. Sam came out last and put his cap back on against the snow. Cole reached the bottom step. Sage walked to him. No command, no coaxing. She crossed the space slowly. Body still too thin. Scars hidden under winter fur. Torn ear tilted toward the street. She stopped before him and lowered her head into his open hand. Cole did not close his fingers at first. He let her choose the contact all the way. Then he rested his palm against the warm crown of her head. Tucker, unwilling to let dignity operate without supervision, jumped at Cole's boot and missed, landing in a soft drift with a noise like a dropped mitten. Megan laughed first. It broke the tension in pieces. Jacob bent and lifted the puppy, and Tucker immediately tried to eat his zipper. "He forgives everybody with teeth," Jacob said. Abby looked at Sage leaning into Cole's hand. "Not everybody." The days after the hearing did not turn Rockland kind overnight. That was the first mercy. A town that changes too quickly is usually rehearsing. Some people thanked Cole quietly in the hardware store. Others looked away as if they had nearly believed Graham and resented being interrupted. One fisherman told Cole that Harborstone was the best chance the town had seen in decades. He said it while buying emergency hand warmers and a new radio battery, which Cole considered a theological puzzle and chose not to discuss. Harborstone did not vanish. Its lawyers sent letters with clean margins and careful regret. Graham released a statement expressing concern, cooperation, and disappointment. 3 words that could wear a suit and block a doorway at a funeral. Trevor Pike was under investigation for animal abuse, contractor fraud, property damage, and false transport records. Cole knew enough not to confuse investigation with justice. The machine had lost a gear. It had not stopped turning. So he worked. Every morning before sunrise, he split wood behind Henry's house, while the sky changed from black to iron to thin blue. He drove to Beacon Cove station with supplies logged in a binder Grace had labeled with terrifying precision. He learned county forms, radio check procedures, inspection codes, and the particular humiliation of asking for help in language other people could answer. That part hurt. Cole had been useful for most of his adult life by carrying more than he was asked to carry. Beacon Cove required a different kind of strength. It looked like calling Sam when a roof brace needed 2 people. It looked like letting Nora correct his date format with the stern joy of a woman who believed sloppy records caused moral decay. It looked like accepting boxes of blankets from Megan without saying he could manage. "You can manage with them too," Megan said, thrusting a box into his arms. "Try variety. It builds character." Tucker climbed into the second box and fell asleep on donated wool with all 4 paws in the air. Nora looked down at him. "At least one member of this operation understands inventory placement." Sage recovered in slower weather. Her body gained strength before her truss did. The hollows behind her ribs softened. Gold returned to her chest. The black saddle across her back began to shine in patches less like ruin and more like armor remembered. But leather gloves still made her freeze. Chains turned her to stone. A truck slowing near the road could lift her from sleep in one breath. Cole did not ask her to heal faster than truth allowed. Some mornings they walked the boundary together, her green harness loose and careful around scar tissue. She would trot beside him for a while, then stop near the old launch ramp where he had found her. On those days, Cole stopped too. He did not speak much. Wounds did not always want language standing over them with a lantern. One afternoon, Abby came by with medicine and found Cole sitting on the porch steps while Sage watched the road. "You look like a man trying not to chase a thought," she said. "Do you bill extra for that?" "Only if the thought bites." She sat beside him, leaving space between their shoulders. The bay beyond the trees smelled of thawing kelp and snow. "You did well in there," she said. "I wanted to do badly." "I know." Cole looked at his hands. "There are moments I trust the part of me that can stop a threat more than the part that can keep a promise." Abby's face softened, but not with pity. He was grateful for that. Henry was not gentle every day. He fought people, offended people, broke forms, bent rules, made enemies. But when the storm came, the door opened. Maybe keeping a promise is not being soft. Maybe it is returning to the work after anger gets tired. Cole let the words settle. Inside the house, Tucker barked at his reflection in the stove door, lost confidence, and barked louder. Sage huffed once from the steps. Not amusement. Close enough. That night, after Abby left and the stove burned low, Cole woke to Sage standing in the hallway. Not at Henry's bedroom this time, at the back door. Her body was rigid, nose lifted. Cole listened. At first, there was only wind. Water. The soft snore of Tucker asleep under a chair. Then came a faint sound from the shed. Wood against wood. A scrape. Someone moving badly in the dark. Cole reached for the flashlight on the table. Sage gave one low growl, and outside, beyond the frosted glass, a shadow slipped between the shed and the trees. Dawn had not yet reached Beacon Cove when Cole opened the back door, and the cold came in sharp enough to make the house seem to inhale. Snow fell in small, hard grains that clicked against the porch boards. The old rescue shed stood half hidden beyond the yard, its roof white, its doorway black where the latch had been forced. Cole held the flashlight low. Sage stood at his left in her harness, silent, every muscle awake. Tucker had been shut in the bathroom for his own safety and was announcing through the door that history would judge this decision poorly. Cole moved across the yard without hurry, though his body wanted speed. The old part of him measured angles, shadows, lines of fire that were not there. The newer, less certain part remembered Grace's voice, Abby's eyes, Henry's rule on the station wall. Evidence first, anger after, if there was any use for it. The shed door hung open. Inside, drawers had been pulled, crates shoved aside, old rope scattered across the floor. Whoever came had looked for Henry's tin and found nothing. Cole had moved it to Grace's office 2 nights earlier, after Nora said in her cheerful way that only fools kept important documents where desperate men had already failed to find them. Sage crossed to the corner where the plank had been and sniffed. Then she moved to the workbench and froze. Cole followed the beam of his flashlight. A smear of fresh mud marked the bench leg. Embedded in it was a tiny wedge of red paint. Not from Henry's shed. Cole photographed it, bagged it with the slow care Abby had drilled into him, and called Grace before sunrise. By 8, a deputy had come, taken notes, and admitted with visible discomfort that the red paint matched a utility trailer reported at Trevor Pike's storage yard. Trevor denied everything by lunchtime. Of course he did. By dinner, the denial had already begun to sound thin. The break-in did not frighten Cole the way it was meant to. It steadied him. Not because he was brave, because someone had revealed fear. People did not search dark sheds in bad weather for memories that had no power. The following weeks came in work-stained pieces. Beacon Cove Station became less like a crime scene and more like a living room built for strangers. Sam replaced the lower door hinge and reinforced the storm shutter. Megan organized a blanket drive out of her shop and bullied half the town into donating wool socks and canned soup. "Compassion is easier when I invoice it emotionally," she told Cole. Nora built a log system so precise that Grace called it aggressive but admissible. Jacob came every Friday after classes to stack wood, check batteries, and repair the old sign at the fork. He did not become forgiven in one sunrise. Megan still went quiet sometimes when she looked at him. Jacob still apologized too fast. But he showed up, and showing up, Cole learned, was its own language. One afternoon, Jacob painted the sign letters under Sage's solemn inspection, while Tucker stole the paintbrush and ran in a circle of triumph. The brush was found under the porch with one chewed end and no remorse. "He is a menace," Jacob said. "He is management," Cole answered. Sage healed by inches. Her coat thickened. The torn ear kept its tilt, giving her a look of permanent skeptical wisdom. She learned that Sam's rough hands brought biscuits, not chains. She learned Nora's mail satchel smelled of paper and peppermint. She learned Megan's voice could be sharp without being dangerous. Reuben did not exist in this version of their town, but there were other people like him, men and women who had looked away and now stood awkwardly at the edge of repair, holding supplies, saying too little, hoping work could become apology. Cole accepted the work when it helped. He did not rush forgiveness on anyone, including himself. Abby came twice a week, then whenever she claimed she happened to be nearby, which usually meant she had driven 6 miles out of her way, with medication forms coffee, or a sandwich Cole had not admitted he needed. They turned Henry's side shed into a temporary recovery space for abandoned working dogs. Clean straw, heat lamps, crates with doors tied open unless medically required, a locked cabinet of medical supplies,
and a hand-painted sign Megan criticized so thoroughly she had to repaint it herself. Cole and Abby worked side by side one Saturday as freezing rain tapped the roof. He fixed a loose heat lamp bracket. She sorted bandages. Their shoulders brushed once. Neither moved away quickly. That was how some beginnings arrived, not with music, but with two tired people not flinching from the same small space. "You know," Abby said, "Henry would pretend not to like this. Then add more rules. Then break them." Cole tightened the bracket. "Sounds hereditary." She looked at him, and the smile that came was small, warm, and real. That night, Cole opened Henry's bedroom for the first time. The room smelled of cedar-old wool and dust warmed by the vent. A narrow bed stood against one wall, boots lined beneath it. On the dresser sat a photograph of Cole at 12, holding a striped bass, badly Henry behind him pretending not to be proud. Cole stood there a long time. Sage came to the doorway but did not enter until he sat on the bed. Then she walked in slow and rested her head against his knee. Tucker tumbled in after her, immediately found one of Henry's slippers and carried it under the bed as if retrieving state property. Cole laughed, and the laugh broke open into something close to grief. He bent forward, one hand on Sage's head, the other over his eyes. He did not say he was sorry. Not yet. He did not know which dead man would hear it first. Near the end of the 4th week, the county inspector came to Beacon Cove station. Patricia Wells came too, unofficially, wearing boots that suggested she did not trust ceremony on ice. Grace carried her binder. Nora carried a backup binder, because faith had limits. The station passed provisional inspection with corrections due more reflective markers on the path, a second battery case, a clearer radio instruction sheet, better stove, gloves. "We can do that," Cole said. Sam grunted. "We can do half of it today and complain about the rest." Megan arrived with cupcakes, despite Cole's refusal to have any kind of opening. "Ribbons are for hair and grand hotels," she said. "Cupcakes are for people with blood sugar and unresolved feelings." There was no speech, no stage, no photograph with Cole in the center pretending one man had done what many hands had carried. There was only a coastal station, stocked and warm, dry wood, stacked, blankets, folded, radio, tested, maps, sealed, first aid kit, mounted, coffee packets in a tin, a kettle on the shelf, and a ledger on the table. On the first page, beneath Henry's old rule, Cole wrote, "If this light helps you through the storm, leave warmth for the next traveler." He stared at the sentence for a long while. Less command, more invitation. Outside, Sage stood near the door looking into the station and then back at Cole. Snow began to fall in soft, harmless flakes. Tucker tried to climb a drift and rolled backward with tremendous dignity. Sam laughed so hard he leaned on his shovel. That should have been enough for the day. Then 6 nights later, the radio in Cole's kitchen crackled at 9:17 p.m. The house was warm. Abby was at the table updating supply notes. Sage lay near the door, and Tucker slept upside down by the stove with outrageous trust. A county dispatcher spoke through static. "Delivery van off-road near the lower coast route. Adult male, hypothermia risk. County response delayed by ice." Cole reached for his coat. Before he got to the hook, another voice came over the radio, rough, shivering. "Alive. Beacon Cove station in sight," the driver said. "I see the light." Wind came hard off Penobscot Bay that night, driving snow across Beacon Cove Road in white sheets and turning every headlight into a small blurred moon. Cole stood in the kitchen with one hand on his coat and the other on the radio as the stranded driver's voice cracked through static. "Beacon Cove station in sight. I see the light." For a second, no one moved. Abby looked up from the supply binder, her pen still in her hand. Sage rose from the rug in one smooth motion, ears forward, torn one, tilted by its old scar. Tucker slept on, belly exposed, one paw twitching as if chasing a dream too large for the room. The dispatcher's voice returned, thin under interference. "Vehicle disabled, driver ambulatory but cold, road crew delayed. Confirm station access." Cole pressed the transmit button. "Beacon Cove station is stocked, stove, ready, radio, live. Driver, if you hear me, go inside, close the door. Use the matches in the tin by the stove and answer when warm enough." Static.
Wind against the house. Then the driver again, closer to breath than speech. "Copy. Doors open." Cole closed his eyes for one beat. The doors open. All the court papers, all the polished threats, all the county corrections, all the doubts that had sat at his table with their boots on, none of them disappeared. Graham still had lawyers. Trevor still had excuses. The 12-month provisional term still stretched ahead like a winter road with no guardrail. But somewhere down the coast, a living man had found an unlocked door and a dry box of matches. Because Henry Parker had made a promise, and because Cole had stayed long enough to keep it from being smothered. Abby stood. "Road's bad." "I know." "You're going anyway?" "Only to the upper fork. If he is inside and stable, we guide county from there." She gave him a look. "That sounded almost procedural." "Grace is ruining me." Sage stepped to the back door. Cole shook his head. "Not tonight." The dog held his eyes, not pleading, deciding. Abby touched Cole's sleeve. "She knows that route better than you do." The sentence was simple and infuriating because it was true. Cole clipped Sage's loose harness careful around the old scars and left Tucker snoring in Abby's care. The road to the upper fork had become a narrow tunnel of blowing snow. Cole drove Henry's truck slowly, hazard lights blinking, Sage standing braced in the back seat with her nose toward the cracked window. The heater groaned. The wipers fought and lost, and fought again. At the fork, the old sign Jacob had repainted shone under reflective strips. Beacon Cove Harbor Light. Sage gave a low sound. Cole parked where the plow had left a ridge and continued on foot, flashlight low, radio clipped to his coat. The world shrank to the crunch of his boots, the sting on his cheeks, the salt smell under the cold, and Sage's dark shape moving ahead. She did not run. She measured. Once she stopped and refused the obvious path. Cole looked closer and saw glassy ice under powder where the road tilted toward the rocks. He followed her around it. "Trust the dog." Henry's words, ridiculous and holy, walked beside him. The station light appeared through the trees, small and gold. Inside, a man in a delivery jacket sat near the stove, wrapped in 2 blankets, shaking, but awake. His face was gray, his hands red, his eyes wet with the shock of being alive. "You Parker?" he asked when Cole entered. "Tonight, yes." The man gave a broken laugh that almost became a sob. "Whoever stocked this place, tell them thank you." Cole looked at the stove, the wood, the map, Megan's blankets, Sam's latch, Nora's log sheet, Abby's first aid kit, Jacob's painted sign, Henry's carved words on the wall, and Sage standing in the doorway with snow along her back like silver ash. "I will," he said. County crews reached them 90 minutes later. The driver would keep all his fingers.
That became the official good news.
The unofficial news moved through Rockland faster. By morning, 2 people had left wood at Beacon Cove without signing the ledger. By noon, someone dropped off a box of wool socks at Megan's shop. By evening, Nora had created a donation form that frightened generosity into better handwriting. Graham's next letter arrived 3 days later, softer than before, full of cooperation and community respect. Grace read it, snorted once, and filed it under useful weather. Trevor Pike's case moved slowly, as cases did when truth had to cross desks, but Jacob was no longer alone inside it. Megan still had hurt in her eyes sometimes. She also had her son at the shop counter every Saturday, measuring rope, sweeping floors, and learning that repair was not a speech. It was repetition. Near the end of winter, Cole carved a new sign for the entrance to the Parker place. He used cedar from Henry's shed and worked by the window while snow melted from the eaves in steady drops. His hands were not delicate tools, but they had learned patience. Tucker stole a curl of cedar and carried it proudly to Sage, who ignored him with queenly restraint. Abby sat at the table reviewing inspection notes, pretending not to watch Cole misspell traveler on the first attempt.
2 L's if you are British, she said.
I am honoring our allies.
You are sanding it off.
He sanded it off.
When the sign was finished, he rubbed oil into the wood until the grain deepened. Nothing living is disposable. He fixed it near the lane on a clear evening after fresh snow. Sage stood several feet away, watching the road. The same road, not the exact post, not the exact drift, but the same long white ribbon that had brought Cole home with 1 duffel and had carried Sage to the edge of death. For a moment, her body tightened. Cole waited. He did not command healing. He did not dress patience up as wisdom. He simply stood there, hands open,
while the wind moved across the field with the smell of pine-cold earth and distant wood smoke. Tucker, deeply committed to ruining solemnity, attacked Cole's left bootlace and pulled backward with all the seriousness of a creature chosen for sacred office.
"Tucker," Cole said. "I am attempting dignity." Tucker growled. Sage turned her head. Then she gave a low huff. Not quite amusement. Close enough. Cole laughed, and the sound went out across the snow, rough and real. Sage looked toward the road once more. Then she turned away from it and walked back to the porch. No parade. No miracle music. Just a choice. The porch light glowed gold against the blue dusk. Inside waited a warm stove, a scarred kitchen table, Henry's compass on the shelf, Abby's mug beside Cole's, Tucker's stolen slipper under a chair, and enough life to make silence feel full instead of empty. Cole followed Sage inside. Later, he stepped out once more to add wood to the rack. Snow fell gently over Beacon Cove,
over the repaired gate, over the lane, over the sign facing the road, like a vow. He thought of Henry then, not as a saint and not as a burden, but as an old man who had kept a light burning imperfectly and left enough embers for someone else to find. Sage lay before the door, head lifted toward the wind. Tucker slept on his back near the stove, trusting the whole world with his soft belly. Abby touched Cole's hand as she passed him a cup of coffee, and neither of them moved away too quickly. Outside, the road passed by Beacon Cove without taking anyone from it. Not tonight. Sometimes the greatest legacy is not land or a house, or even a name people remember with respect. Sometimes it is a light left burning for the next weary soul on the road, and the courage to keep adding wood when no one is watching. The lesson Cole learned at Beacon Cove was simple enough to fit in one cold hand and deep enough to last a lifetime. Healing does not always come through grand victories. Sometimes it comes through opening the door again tomorrow, stacking wood, checking on a neighbor, forgiving slowly, and refusing to let any living heart believe it has been forgotten. God often places small lights in ordinary hands: a blanket, a warm stove, a kind word, a dog who still chooses trust after pain. If this story touched your heart, comment Amen and tell us which moment stayed with you most. Share it with someone who needs courage for the next storm. May your home be filled with peace. May your road be watched over. And may hope keep one faithful light burning for you and for every weary soul still trying to find the way home.